Hi, everyone. Welcome to Optimized for Humans. I'm your host, Usha. I'm an executive coach and consultant, and I'm really passionate about this topic of driving AI adoption. And today I'm speaking with David Alsop, who is the CHRO at UltraDent and co author of the upcoming book, Making HR Matter, a book designed to elevate HR as a true business accelerator for executive teams. David brings over 20 years of experience across organizations like UltraDent, Kraft Foods, Nabisco, and Oscar Mayer, and he works at the intersection of business, human behavior, and strategic leadership. David, welcome.
It's great to be here, Usha.
Well, I'd love to start a conversation, given your kind of HR expertise and really how you're thinking about, how HR can be a really strategic partner for executive teams and for the organization. I'd love to start by asking you, how is HR uniquely positioned to drive AI adoption?
It's a great question. If you think about just the first word in HR, it's human. That puts us right at the intersection of if we are a strategic function, not just a reactive function, we can be at the intersection of helping unite a unity between AI and humans in our businesses to succeed. And so, in my mind, in my experience, in my company, we are at the really the intersection of that to make it successful. And so, are we in HR participating at the forefront of the AI committees in our companies? Are we providing perspective? Are we helping to understand and helping to shape the thinking when it comes to the potential of humans with AI? And so for me, as an example, I have been studying the human brain for the last few years in this environment, trying to understand what is the strength of the human brain compared to AI. And what I have really come to have a passion for is our brains, if we churn them the right way with anything, with another human giving us ideas that we can bounce back and forth in our minds, or even with AI giving us new ideas that we can think about. It's our brains that are the ones that can think of things that have never been thought of before. And that's where we can be the partners in leading and helping and partnering with AI to be as successful as it can be, because for AI to be successful, it has to make us successful. And so I just think HR has to be at the intersection of helping leaders, helping the business understand how we as humans can be partners in the equation versus, the fear that can sometimes overtake a culture by it's going to take our jobs versus it's going to partner and expand our jobs. And if we can shape that, we can be at the intersection.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about how you think about what should remain uniquely human versus should be automated versus should be held in partnership. How do you make those decisions in the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you've got to start at the basic core of what your purpose is as a company. In our company, we're a
Yeah.
manufacturer of dental devices, dental products for, improving oral health globally. That's our purpose. And so, we have to be able to invent, create, and drive the best products for our purpose. And so when it starts at just a job, we have to look at that job and identify, is there something AI can do that we have to research to see if that can do it better than what we can do with a manual labor environment? And what we find when we look at just the opportunity and potential between AI and humans, focusing on potential, is there's certain things that AI can't replace with the potential of a human. And so when we put it in terms of potential, that helps us to define the opportunity of the future. And so with a production position, if AI can help accelerate something, let's pursue that. Let's identify that. And in the end, when we implement that, if that eliminates the need for a human task, we look at, is there a potential that the human can evolve into versus eliminate? And if we can't have the potential of the human keep up, that gives us an opportune decision to find efficiencies in the cost model of our company. But more often than not, what we find is often we find the human in that aspect can actually find a new opportunity to accelerate our business forward in a different way because AI replaced the old thing that they do. And so I just look at it that way, and we try to look at it that way as a company, is if there is efficiency, if there is opportunity, let's pursue it, let's research it, not react, not push out the human yet until we know what the potential of both together can be. And what we find is more often than not, the human has a great potential to do something different, not necessarily just be replaced. And so you have to look at that position by position and look at the potential of every position. And sometimes we have found that there's certain functions, certain positions that may have less potential than the AI in that environment, especially the administrative tasks. And so that's really how we start looking at it. And then we divide it up into administrative thinking tasks and business growing tasks. And really, the administrative tasks have the greatest opportunity for AI to take potential into the future. And then if we can make ourselves more effective on the thinking tasks, that's where it can push us forward.
I like that you've really started with the purpose of the organization and kind of the mission statement, because I think that's actually there's an opportunity to really reimagine organizations from this kind of functional siloed sense of, like every person has a job description, etc., to actually like this is an amalgamation of a bunch of actors who are problem solvers, who actually own the mission. And so how do we encourage people to own the problems and find new ways to innovate and grow and try new things, and actually like empowering people to also figure out how to make their job more efficient so that they can free up their own time and energy to do other things. But I think to your point, one of the things that I think stops that right now is the fear that people do have. And I think it's a legitimate fear around like, well, if I make the AI too good at doing my job, then
Hmm.
what am I here for? But I think a lot of that is, needs to be driven by like reimagining what our role and purpose is and having multiple roles that people fill and fit into that are constantly evolving rather than kind of like a static, here's your job description. And then what happens if I figure out how to have AI replace most of that job description? You know?
Yeah, I love what you brought into that is just there's an innovation and an evolution that we should always be thinking about regardless of AI. Early in my career, I had a lot of mentors, and one of the best pieces of advice I ever got is if you work yourself out of a job, you will never lose your job. And I think a lot of people fear and don't see the potential of working yourself out of a job, which means all that means is you are evolving. You're finding the opportunity to do that job better and better and better over time, continuously improving and replacing the old with new constantly. And when I've been able to do that and have the curiosity for the future, the tech, the opportunities in my profession, um, they found new opportunities for me. They saw the
Yeah.
potential in me. And so I think if people that have always thought that way, they're not having a problem in this environment. The people that are having problems in this environment are the ones that always feared working themselves out of a job, and they didn't understand that. And so if people can think that way, like you said, if we pursue the purpose, AI is just a partner to help us get our purpose faster, more effectively, and we need to partner with it to do that. And if we don't have the curiosity to look at that opportunity for potential, yeah, we get stuck in the fear of losing a job versus maximizing our job and evolving it into the future.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more from you around like what do you think is the culture and mindset that's most conducive to drive successful adoption? And I'd love to kind of hear your perspective both from the top down and the bottom up. So what do you think is the right kind of culture that should be shaped by the leaders and mindsets that should be held by the leaders? And then the same for employees.
Yeah, if we start with just the general culture, I look at it, there's certain things that are so important for a culture of innovation to thrive. You have to have people that are humble, confident in the same environment. And sometimes we put those two principles against each other, that you're either confident or you're not confident. And in the end, someone that has the curiosity to accept feedback, to learn from feedback, to, test and fail as they go and be open to the feedback through that process. That's what you need in that environment with all people, to have humility to listen to feedback and be open to receive it, but the confidence to know that they can succeed and learn through that feedback to grow. And when you have that, that's what the curiosity in this environment of AI can take you to, is you can test and try and do different things to master it, to go forward in it. And so I think with leaders have to create an environment where people can take risks in the AI environment, but also set the boundaries of what risks are too far. So for example, in our environment, in a manufacturing environment like we are not a high we're not a company that has the funds to be able to go into the lawsuit environment of AI. And so we are setting a principle for ourselves, and we've talked about it this way, that there's companies that are going to just do the cutting edge to the point of lawsuit. And that's what they're doing to pave the way for the rest of us. What we want to do is we want to, just cuddle right behind them, watch what they do, watch their failures, watch the lawsuits, and experiment right behind that. So we can be in the safe place for our business that can't afford the lawsuits of, AI experimentation, to be able to jump in. And so where we're at is, how do we partner with AI? How do we use it for the agentic environment to have agents and interactions and integrations into the automation of our systems? And so for us, we have to have leadership that's aligned and unified to create a culture of experimentation, but knowing how far the experimentation can go to be able to make it successful. So for us, we've got to manage that. We've got to have an ethical environment that we know the ethical limits of what copyright, what we can put into the system, and how we can partner with it to be successful. And so I think outside of the leaders having that cultural creation and the boundary creation, the employees in that environment can thrive much better if they have the humility, the confidence, and the curiosity to just, if you're sitting at your desk and you've got something you're working on that's administrative in nature, experiment with something to get it done better. Experiment with AI doing it for you, and take those experiments to be able to share throughout the culture to show what you're doing. And incrementally, you'll see people sharing best practices, experiments, the IT organization coming in and helping people create the bot or create the agent or create the interaction that AI can just take tasks off your plate so you can focus on new things to accelerate the business forward. And so if leaders organize and set the boundaries and create the culture and what the culture is that they want to have, employees just need to work hard to be curious, humble, confident, accept feedback, and grow and experiment in that environment.
Yeah, I love that you've actually kind of talked about and have the strategy of like the fast follow. So you're not necessarily going to be the one leading, but you want to be in that fast follow kind of position. And I love that there's actually been a conversation and alignment around your position as an organization, around what you want to experiment with. And the other thing that really stands out to me is in what you're describing is the growth mindset. From the top down all the way through to every employee, like that you're really trying to and wanting people to have the ability to sort of learn, unlearn, receive feedback, and continually experiment and try things in an environment where there are really clearly defined guardrails and boundaries, which I think makes a huge difference. What have been some things you've tried and done within UltraDent that have actually been really conducive to building that culture, and what have been some challenges you've encountered?
Yeah, I think a couple things that we've done from the beginning is uh, the first thing we had to do is we do have an environment where we're in a regulatory environment. And so we
Sure.
created an AI committee that it includes our proprietary legal partners. It includes our executives over the clinical areas that have the most risk. It includes me on the HR team and the cultural aspect. And it includes our IT leader that's over the data analytics and the AI evolution. And so we have that committee that organized, policy, training, and guidance on how to use AI. And at the same time, we had to identify which positions are most ready to use it and who gets the licenses to be able to use the basics of AI. And so we're a Microsoft organization. We use Copilot. We also use ChatGPT at certain levels, but we've identified which positions need which kind of AI, and we've provided the guardrails, the training, and the understanding on how to use it. And so just by doing that in the beginning, it's helped us to see the outcroppings of experimentation with functions that are jumping in and working with the IT partners to create tools and bots and agents. And they're really getting into the cutting edge just by naturally experimenting with the tools we have and then identifying in their professions what tools are most cutting edge in their professions. And we're able to partner through that together with the committee to identify which things we can just accelerate faster and which things we need to slow down on that might be a little bit too much in the risk area for our culture. And so that's kind of the start where we're at. Now we're in a phase where, as we put together our strategies for the company that are going to be the focus areas for the future, it's put us in a mindset where AI is front and center in those strategies, and it's integrated in everything we're doing, looking for AI to be a part of it versus it's lagging behind as a secondary part of our discussions. It's right in the middle of every conversation we have. And I think that stems from having a committee that is focused on it, talking about it, and leading it. And it's providing the employees the tools to experiment with it, to drive it, and really partner through it as they use the tools in their own functions that are of various differences throughout our company.
Yeah, I love the cross-functional nature of the committee as well. You're really thinking about the guardrails in a meaningful way. And also this piece around being really clear about what roles you're starting with, um, as well as, kind of deploying tools that enable most of the roles to start to play with things in a multiple ways. And what are some of the challenges you're facing?
Yeah, great question. Um, I think some of the early challenges we have had in the past that we're overcoming now are sometimes when you let people experiment, you've got to have a way to be able to keep in tune with what they're doing. And so we have had those experiences where someone was experimenting with AI, either with a visual tool or something like that. And before it goes out to the market, we just have to all be aligned on what's going to the market. And so we've been very fortunate that we've had unity and alignment in that. But if you just Google the mistakes that have been made by big companies out there where their marketing teams just took a visual, had AI created, and then for some reason it got out and someone had 2 arms or 3 arms, right? You've got those examples where there's just been AI hallucination that's been actually put out to the market that's destroyed some of the trust in companies. And we've been able to catch that before it goes out because of the committee mindset. So that's a challenge. I think the other challenge is just the people aspect in any company with that fear you talked about is how do you have that continuous conversation flowing to help people be curious and not fearful of it? In a manufacturing company, especially, there's a lot of people that aren't in the technology in their day-to-day jobs. And so because of that, they can be the
Of
ones that
course.
are out there just, fearful of it and spreading that mentality of fear when we've got positions that are going to need to thrive in it and others that are going to need to be curious about it and others that may not spend a ton of time in it. And so you've got to constantly be talking about how we are organized for it, how we're doing it, and educate people on its purpose in our company. And because we talk about it like that, that helps to alleviate the fears that people have and guide the conversation versus if companies are just reacting and they don't have a strategy for it, the fear can take over and limit their ability to move forward. And so our CEO has been very good at really, one, recognizing bias that we all have sometimes in ourselves and finding the right people to surround ourselves with. And that's what our CEO did from day one is he realized I have a bias for certain things that might be contradictory to the cutting edge. So he brought the IT partners into the room and really had great conversations early on how do I overcome my bias and how do I organize our organization for navigating this future. And that really accelerated where we went in the discussions we had as a leadership team because he recognized his own bias that could limit us from going forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is about having those conversations and having those conversations in a regular way and listening to people, and creating space for that. Um, and it's interesting, like you mentioned, the people who um, aren't actually using these tools are some of the ones like in the manufacturing environment are the ones who are maybe afraid. But in some ways, it seems like that's a more secure, it's like those
Hmm.
of us who can do our work on a computer are most at risk in
Yep.
some on some level, right? Like the plumbers out there are fine for now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's the paradox of that stands out to me on some level.
Yeah, it is interesting because the most secure positions are going to be some of the manual positions to an
Yeah,
extent, but
to an extent.
they're also the ones that, because they're less educated in the environment, they think when they hear the word AI, they think the robots are coming.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's always going to be the case with every position, but you just have to educate people on where are we at, where's the cutting edge going to be for our company, and help people understand the stability of where they're at today, um, and just understand what you're preparing people for the future, and you can help people navigate and prepare for that.
Yeah, I also think, like, of course, the cost efficiency is a part of the conversation and part of the
Hmm.
equation. But I think the more untapped part of the equation is the growth and innovation piece.
Yeah.
Part of increasing your profit is reducing your costs, but a whole other part of increasing your profit is like increasing your revenue. And I think actually empowering people within the organization to tap into new possibilities and actually experiment and try new things can unlock possibilities that weren't quite available or visible so far. And there's something about that creativity that you're speaking about around like human behavior of like coming up with new and novel ideas. And how do we create more space for people to really lean into that?
Yeah, you can't talk about the future without thinking how do you do it as profitably as possible. I mean, the whole goal of business sometimes is how do you do the most with the least amount of resources to do it. That's what profit's all about. But to your point, like I said earlier, you have to think about the potential. And when we think about the potential of a human, when we think about the potential of a division, the potential of a business, and the potential of a product, how do we reach and identify the fullest potential of that product? And sometimes it's going to be sales, and that will bring the profit over time, and the growth comes from that. And so, AI definitely can bring profitability, but if we only think about profitability without understanding potential of sales, we miss the opportunity that can exist to grow it faster, become more efficient, and grow the whole system at the same time.
Yeah. So along those lines, what do you think are some leadership capabilities that are going to be especially crucial in this moment in time?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, I think the future of leadership has to ensure that leaders, if you think about the nature of leadership in general in companies, they're the ones with the most tenure, sometimes the most experience, but also they come with some of the most bias in the future of innovation. I talk to a lot of executives in my networking where they're in a comfort stage of their career. We all get there in a point where we've really experienced a lot of things that we lean on that have made us successful to get to the points we're at. And a lot of leaders sometimes struggle with that. And so leaders have to have a humility and a curiosity to be able to accept that I may be someone that's comfortable in a certain way that's not conducive with the curiosity acceleration of my company's innovation. And so if they don't have that humility in a leadership role to accept their comfort with what's got them to where they're at, they can hold back an organization and hold it back dramatically from moving forward with the authority that they have to unleash the innovation. And so leaders have to have that curiosity. I do think the reality of technology ever present in any company's future for the past 50 years, you have to have a tech savvy, not necessarily a tech skill set that's at the max level of integrations and, being the tech people. But as leaders, we have to have a tech savvy to be curious about it, be in it, be using it, and experimenting with it. And that can make us comfortable with leading it. But some executives just hold on to the way they've always done it. And, we've got executives sometimes that prefer a spreadsheet when automation could just blow the efficiencies out of the water than a spreadsheet can. And so you've got to have a curiosity, an openness, a humility, and you've got to be willing to surround yourself with people that are thinking more deep than you are about the future of cutting edge AI right now. And leaders that have the humility, the understanding of their biases, their comfort zones, and the curiosity to overcome that are the ones that can build organizations that have talent that can help take them to the next level, even if they're deficient in the fullness of what the skill sets are of the future.
Yeah, it's again that fast follow piece, right?
Yep.
And the growth mindset piece kind of coming together, of surrounding yourself with new innovative ideas and figuring out where you want to implement and try and experiment and continue to sort of learn and unlearn as you go through this. My last question for you, David, is what's one piece of advice you have for another senior leader out there, especially someone who wants to, in much the way that you have as an organization, really put AI at the center of their strategy?
Yeah, I think the top thing that comes to my mind is get to know the right people in the environment of the future. Know who the experts are. Follow the people that are talking about it the right way. Beware of social media and what I call the frenzy of frequency versus the authenticity of quality content. There's people out there that have really authentic education impact in the innovations of the future, and know who those people are, know who those organizations are, and in your organization know who those people are that you need to surround yourself when you have innovation in the future. And if you think about the future, you're always surrounding yourself with people that are thinking differently. They churn your mind by challenging you with different thought processes. But I really think it's important. And one thing that's helped me in my career is just getting outside of the confines of my organization to get to know people that are talking about the future. And when you're around people like that, it gets you thinking and knowing where to go to learn about the future. And that helps leaders to be really aware of and understanding their place in the future. Whereas leaders that just stay in a vacuum of their organization, they don't really pay attention and they're not up to speed on what they need to be researching and preparing for constantly. Um, and so, if they can trigger their minds, if they can churn their minds constantly, they'll be able to be curious for the future and find the right future and the right people to help them with that.
I love that, David. I think learning is going to be our competitive edge in this moment, and really that ability to like learn, unlearn, and reimagine things, and the growth mindset piece that you spoke about, I think is really going to be more important than ever in this environment. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's been a real pleasure, and it's been a real pleasure to kind of get to know an organization that's leading with AI in such an intentional way.
Thank you, Usha. It's been great to talk to you today and just talk about AI and its future for all of us.